70% of men over 40 suffering from ED, all those cases, it comes down to blood vessel dysfunction. So you're not getting blood downstairs. But what most individuals don't realize is your blood vessels are running everywhere in the body. They're feeding your brain, they're feeding your mitochondria, everything that you need. If it's showing up downstairs, it's also showing up in the brain, lungs, literally everywhere.
Dr. Cody Strodtman is a leading expert in health and wellness. As a naturopathic doctor and acupuncturist, Dr. Strodtman combines his expertise in health coaching with a passion for helping others. He is the author of the acclaimed book, Your Life, Your Choice, The Rise of Adaptive Medicine, and the founder of Adaptive Medicine.
So what do you think causes that in men under 40? Where's that piece coming from?
The psychological issues with younger men is just really reshuffling the deck of young men. And it's causing performance anxiety, fight or flight, which causes sexual problems. Health is synonymous with robust function, and disease is dysfunction. So the next logical step is, how do we move the needle away from disease towards health? And that is adaptation, which follows the formula: challenge, recover, and repair.
Welcome to Prescribing the Truth. I'm Dr. Nicole Morris, a Catholic naturopathic doctor and natural fertility expert. Around here, we don't just accept the mainstream narrative, we question it. My goal with every episode is to share the love of Jesus with you and empower you to make informed, confident decisions for you and your family. So grab a cup of tea, get comfy, maybe even throw on your tin hat, and let's dive in. Welcome to Prescribing the Truth. Thrilled to be back with you, and even more thrilled to have my colleague, my friend, Dr. Cody Strodtman, here with me today. Cody and I went to med school way back, which really wasn't that far back, but it feels far back, 5 or 6 years ago. And he is the founder of the Adaptive ED solution. So we're talking erectile dysfunction today. He is also the author of Your Life, Your Choice. Fabulous book. I have it right here in front of me. Such a beautiful read. If you are into reading books, highly recommend. But thanks for being here with me today, Cody. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah. I'm glad to be talking with you. And thank you so much for having me on and chatting.
Course. Let's dive in. I always love to just start with your story. I want to learn a little bit more about you. I'm sure all of those that are listening do as well. So if you're willing, I'd love to hear a little more about what led you to naturopathic medicine. You're an acupuncturist too, right? Is that correct? Mm-hmm. So tell us the story. What led you to where you are today?
Okay. So here's Cody Strodtman in a nutshell. So I was born and raised in Kansas and went to Kansas State University and got my degree in microbiology. That was my focus. And then in the summer, I went off to Idaho and did wildland firefighting, fell in love with the mountains. I love the camaraderie, just being out in nature. Absolutely loved it. But despite the thrills that job offered, I thought it would be good to put my degree to work. So I got a job at a biotech startup and started managing their lab, running experiments. And that was equally exciting. The scientific aspects, the nuances of a startup, that was fun. But at that time in my life, it just lacked meaning and purpose. And during that turmoil, a question emerged that changed my life forever. And that was, what's the most valuable thing that you can do for yourself and others? And the only thing that came through was health. And then I took that and ran with it. And that ultimately led to naturopathic medicine and Chinese medicine and writing this book.
Beautiful. And so was there any big moment for you in that journey that was really defining, that made you say like, oh, this is a big thing that shifted my perspective, or a big health crisis that you experienced, or something really significant in your life? Or was it just like this underlying nagging sensation that you had to move into health?
Yeah. So the turmoil in my life that I mentioned, I didn't have meaning, I didn't have purpose, and that was creating a lot of negative self-coping mechanisms, depression, and I just wasn't in a good state. And hence the question. And still to this day, I thought if I understood health, like really understood it, I could help myself and others. And that's valuable. That's something to pursue.
Yeah, absolutely. So what was it about naturopathic medicine that drew your attention opposed to going the conventional medical route?
That's a great question. And I was initially studying for the MCATs, and I wanted to go into research in neurology, just because I didn't fall in line with the conventional medical route of just their methods. It's pills, surgeries, and injections, which are great for emergency medicine, not so good for chronic health. And I didn't want to go into that system. So as I was studying and just griping to my roommate, Rainika, she mentioned naturopathic medicine. And in Kansas, I think at the time there was 5 naturopathic doctors, all pretty much in Kansas City. I was like, I have no idea what this is. And I just briefly looked it up and I was like, I got to check it out. So I started shadowing them, just seeing remarkable results that I had no idea were even possible. And probably after the third shadow, I was like, that's it. This is what I'm doing. And I decided to focus on the root cause and really help individuals out. And I thought that this was health.
So had you had experience with acupuncture before you got to NUNM, which is where we went to medical school?
Yes, briefly. I had some back episodes and shoulder injuries just from sports and just being a rambunctious young man. So I had some acupuncture with that.
Very good. Cool. What really inspired you to write the book?
Sound like a broken record, but it was health. Like I got out of school and I knew how to diagnose. I had a huge repertoire of tools to help individuals out. But at the end of the day, like I just feel like I did not understand the mechanisms of health. So I decided to put clinic on hold for a little bit and just go back to first principles and just ask the simple questions that I should have asked a long time ago. What is health? How do we improve health? And that journey led to the creation of the book. And it's the foundational principle of how I work with patients today in men's health with the emphasis in erectile dysfunction.
I think your book is so beautiful in that it literally is the tenets of the foundation of health. As I was reading, I'm like, yes, yes, yes. Like this is exactly what we learned first semester, I would say, of medical school, or the, maybe not learned. I think that would be a stretch. These were the ideas that we were introduced to, but somewhere along the journey of naturopathic medical school, they are sorely lost by those guiding us in the journey, unfortunately, I would say. Let's talk about that a little bit. How did you feel walking through naturopathic medical school? Because I think a lot of people just presume that as naturopathic doctors, it was a little hippy dippy. We just went to this like hippy dippy school where we didn't learn pharmacology and biochemistry and all of these tenets of understanding functionality of the body, which we very much so learned in addition to all the naturopathic modalities. But I'd just love to hear your perspective of like, did you feel as we were going through ND school that you were being well trained to be an ND and not an MD?
That's a great question. And it's a mixed bag because everybody's definition of an ND and MD and what a doctor looks like in practice, I think is a bit different. And I came in with the lens of health. I'm going to help individuals improve their health, and that's going to get them out of their suffering and disease. And I felt like it did a great job educating me. The first 2 years were a little frustrating for me because it was a review of the basic sciences, just at rapid pace, which it's always good to get a quick refresher. But I was like, okay, like, where's that? Let's start dealing with the patients. Let's start learning health. And that didn't come around until year 3. Which is fine. So to answer your question, I feel competent in biochemistry, the basic sciences, as well as diagnosing and treating individuals. However, there is a disconnect both in naturopathic medicine and the conventional route, just with how the system is built. Not only the insurance models, but the perception of the patients coming in. They just want a quick fix. Just give me a pill, an herb, acupuncture needle, whatever it may be, and just fix my ills, which is fine. I understand that perspective. And it's been a constant learning process of having to work with individuals. And as much as I hate this phrase, meet them where they are, but that's just what you got to do. And you just got to meet them where they're at, and ultimately help shift their lifestyle so it can improve their health and improving whatever they're going through. And at the end of the day, just make them feel better. I feel like I went off on a tangent. Did that answer your question?
No, it's great. No, it's great. And I agree with everything that you said. And I think our role is really to plant seeds along the journey, right? Because a lot of times our clients or patients, for you, Cody, like they're really sick. We see the sickest of the sickest because the conventional medical model typically has failed them. They haven't received the healing that they're after there because it's a sick care system, right? And so they come to us at their last straw. So they're really sick. So they often are desperate for relief. And I think a lot of times that's where like supplements and maybe an acupuncture needle and these things that we use come into play. And I always say supplements are a life raft. They're getting us where we want to go. They're not the end solution, right? And I think you and I both practice very much on the same wavelength of traditional naturopathic medicine and wanting to get to the foundation, the lifestyle things, the sleep hygiene, those foundational things that are so important to us and we know are really where true healing is found. But sometimes, like you said, we have to meet them where they are and give them a little bit of relief so that they have the clarity, the energy, the motivation to move forward and tackle some of those root cause things that we really want, those foundational things, I should say, that we really want them to address. Would you agree?
Oh, wholeheartedly. And supplements and then whatever external treatment that you have to offer, I view it as a bridge. It's just going to help grease the wheels. It's going to lower their stress, whatever they're dealing with. I don't want to say the real solution, but a cohesive solution.
Absolutely. I think another really interesting point too in the world of naturopathic medicine is that our training is quite broad, right? Going through naturopathic medical school, we come out and can prescribe a narcotic depending on what state you're in, and can do minor surgery, and can also use homeopathy in motivational interviewing, and have all of the training in nutrition. So in the world of naturopaths, I think this comes down to it being really important to interview your provider to make sure that you are establishing care with someone that aligns with what your desires are and what you're after, because that we're all not the same, right? We could be in the same exact building, and I might be a naturopath that is like, nature cure, we are going to do some hydrotherapy on you, and we are going to fast, and we are going to do X, Y, and Z. And you could go to the sweet mate next door and they could write you a narcotic for that pain. So I think it's just a good example of how broad our training is. Not that that's bad, right? I think kind of to your point is we get done and we're kind of like, okay, so what is health again? And how do we do this? And so much, I think, for those of us that are practicing all these years later, it's we learned a lot of our core modalities post-graduation and really honed into extra training and things to support our ideals of practice.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I wholeheartedly agree with you. It's naturopathic medical school. It's quite diverse in what we learn. And I think there's power in the diversity, but I think everybody should interview their doctors, see what they're after, what's their personality, what's their modality like, what are their strengths. And I would say that even with conventional doctors as well.
Well, that was an aside we took, but it was a good conversation to have. I think that's something people need to hear and just have that. That's reassuring, I think, also for a lot of people that are probably listening here. So let's dive into the meat and potatoes of what we're hoping to chat about today. So Cody, you are an expert in erectile dysfunction, and this is might seem to some listening, like a little bit of an awkward topic or thing for us to talk about. But this is a significant piece of health in general, is a significant piece of fertility health. And we know there's a lot of pressure there on men in the fertility world. And essentially, that's what we're doing, is helping, at least in my program, helping couples to conceive. So I would love to dive into this topic with you, Cody. In terms of ED, will you just give us an explanation of what is that? What does that even mean? And we'll go from there.
Right. So the definition is a little bit broad. Usually it's based on a criteria questionnaire called the International Index of Erectile Function. And it's 15 questions that determine sex quality, erection quality, how long you can maintain an erection, and things of that nature. And it puts a scale to it, whether normal, mild, moderate, severe. And that's usually the go-to standard. So it's highly subjective, obviously. And then you try to quantify that with the questionnaire. And I got to tell you, it's ubiquitous. The golden rule here is 40% of men over 40 have ED, 50% of men who are over 50 have ED, and it just keeps ratcheting up the older you get. So it's ubiquitous, it's rampant, it's a really big problem, and a lot of the guys are reluctant to talk about it and seek out health, because I believe in this society we just view any type of illness, particularly a man's dysfunction, as weakness. That's discomforting to talk about. And then also it's just not a physical element. You have the mental, emotional coming in as well, with grief, shame, identity gets involved with not being able to perform. So they're taking a hit there. So it's just a very mixed bag that brings up a lot of discomfort for these men. So with men with ED, the crux of it is metabolic disease at the heart. So another thing I learned about with men with ED is men over 40, they tend to have physiological issues. That's the primary cause. And then men under 40, it's usually psychological. So that in and of itself is interesting, but obviously it's a mixed bag just based on what I talked about with the emotional realm. And to give you a quick example, 70% of men over 40 suffering with ED, all those cases, it comes down to blood vessel dysfunction. So you're not getting blood downstairs. But what most individuals don't realize is your blood vessels are running everywhere in the body. They're feeding your brain, they're feeding your mitochondria, everything that you need. So if it's showing up downstairs, it's also showing up in the brain, lungs, literally everywhere. So this is a physiological problem, which is why ED is called the canary in the coal mine for heart disease. In fact, the first onset of ED, studies have shown that there is a much higher likelihood of having a cardiovascular event 2 to 5 years after. So it's a really, really big problem. And ultimately it comes down to metabolic health for a lot of guys out there. And what's interesting is I've started noticing younger generations, 20s, 30s, starting to suffer with ED and other sexual dysfunction. And so, like I said, historically, it's been psychological, but we're also starting to see metabolic disease in these younger populations as well, just due to our collective lifestyle here in the West.
Yeah. So to reiterate what you're saying is men over 40, it's a function issue, right? There's metabolic issue happening in the body with structure, blood flow, essentially. In men under 40, it's psychological, meaning like it's pressure, it's mental, kind of in their head, for lack of better terms, if you will. So what do you think causes that in men under 40? Where's that piece coming from? Is it from media and society and social media and all of these things? And where do you think that comes from?
The psychological issues with younger men? Yeah. So I think it's multifactorial. The age we live in, with social media, with porn, with the expectations of what it means to be a man. There's just a lot of pressure and performance. And I think that the mindset is shifted on the physical aspect of that, as opposed to connecting and building a relationship and intimacy, which, I mean, does involve physical aspects as well. Definitely it does. But it needs to be shifted to the connection and bond. And I think just where we're at in the world today with all the information, social media, porn, everything like that, is just really reshuffling the deck of young men. And it's causing performance anxiety, fight or flight, which causes sexual problems.
Yeah. And I think our society too puts so little emphasis on the importance of relationship, right? Our society is very much a self-pleasure, one-night stand sort of emphasis today in 2025, unfortunately. And we've really lost the emphasis on the family and relationship with one person. And I think that there's safety in that also, right? Do you think that plays a role for men, is like the safety with one person? It has less of a psychological effect on their performance, would you say?
That's a good idea. I would speculate on it, but I don't know. I don't know. It might definitely in older individuals, but younger lads, I mean, they just want to have fun. They just want to get out there. So I think it just depends on where you're at in life and what your value system is.
Yeah. So what is your main piece of advice above 40 or below 40 when you're working with somebody with ED? Where do you go? What do you do? Yeah.
So I fold in the principles of adaptive medicine that I talk about in my book. In fact, that's my website name. So I'd like to briefly unpack what that means. And adaptive medicine is exactly what it sounds. Adaptation is in of itself medicine. And here's why. So if we break that down from a physiological level, health is synonymous with robust function and disease is dysfunction. And that's it. Health equals function and disease equals dysfunction. So the next logical step is, how do we move the needle away from disease towards health? And that is adaptation, which follows the formula: challenge, recover, and repair. And so when you do that over and over, you adapt, you improve function, and ultimately you can prevent, treat, or reverse up to 80% of all chronic diseases out there. And that's the foundation. That's my structure that I use with working with men with ED, whether it's health consulting outside of ED. That's my basic premise. And the whole point here is to transform an individual's lifestyle into living, breathing medicine with their own behaviors. So that's the goal. But like we talked about earlier, supplements and other things like that help grease the wheels, that is also included. And as you know from working with a lot of individuals, it's not that easy. So there's self-coping mechanisms, belief structures, thoughts about what health is, where this is coming from. So it's just a tangled mess. You have to peel those onions back to get a sustainable solution and meet them where they're at. Yeah. And meet them where they're at.
Yeah, exactly. It all comes back to that, right? Is we can't want it for our clients more than they want it for ourselves. That just stimulates frustration, right? For both parties. So it's just, again, like you said, so important to meet people where they are and support them from where they are moving forward. What would you say are like your top 3 adaptive medicine strategies that you would use in somebody with ED, in terms of like nutrition, thermoregulation? Like, where do you go with those things specifically?
That's a great question. And I would say 3. Well, actually it's 1, but they're folded in. So we'll talk about the first one, which is circadian rhythm. And I say it's a cheat. It's not really one thing because it encompasses 6 different things. So you have on the stimulation side, so when the sun comes up, you have light, you have feeding, and you have movement. Those are the stimulatory aspects that get you going. And then when the sun goes down, you have three sedative factors. You have darkness, fasting, and rest. And we want those to be balanced so everything's firing on all cylinders within our bodies. And within that, you can break that down into say, okay, what's the most optimal thing that you can do for light? Early morning, plenty of light, get out in the sun, vitamin D. What's the best type of food? Whole foods, organic, ideally, but whole foods, do that. And you just keep doing that, and just implementing those alone will eliminate a lot of the fires out there that drive men to seek out help. Along with the circadian rhythm, there are specific techniques to use downstairs to help improve function that honestly are far, far better than what you're going to see at your urologist or men's health clinic. Going back to the ED questionnaire, the International Index of Erectile Function, for example, PRP, shockwave, and some other techniques will usually bump it up 3 to 5 points in that range for a full course, whereas the simple act of Kegels, which is improving the pelvic floor muscles, can bump that up to 10, and that's been shown repeatedly. Yeah, so just simple things like that is what I rely on and work with individuals to really tailor it to their lifestyle so they can sustain it. And those small little tweaks, when done consistently over time, lead to major results.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that just goes back to like naturopathic medicine in general. Just go back to the basics, work on the foundation. Like that's what we need to set. And when we do, health comes as a result of that. In better sexual function is going to come as a result of that as well. Let's talk about cold plunging and sauna. I feel like that is just a huge question that everybody has. Should we be cold plunging? Should we be sauning? In the world of fertility, we talk about should men be sauning? Should they be icing their testicles? Let's dive into that. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I love both. I love temperature stress as a whole. I love cold. I love heat. And I would say, yes, it needs to be implemented, but with an asterisk. There needs to be some bumpers here. So we're talking about whether it be cold or heat on the opposite spectrum, we're activating the stress response. And anytime you do that, whether it's exercise, whether it's fasting, whatever it is, it's always a dose issue. So individuals don't need to go into 40-degree water for 5 to 10 minutes straight out of the gate. You want to start slow, ramp it up. And the anthem is start low and go slow. So it might just be a cold shower for a minute. See how your body responds. See how your mind responds to that. Because we're all unique little snowflakes that are going to respond differently. So we just need to test the waters out. And I would carry that over to heat and anything that activates the stress response. And then when it comes to fertility in particular, men shouldn't be sauning around that time. And you still boost the heat up with jogging, exercise, but you just don't want to take it to the extreme ends because we know how that impacts sperm quality and fertility for men. In regards to, and I would carry that same thing over to women as well. And then on the cold front side, I love it for men. It does a lot of good. So if we break this down into what cold plunge actually does physiologically, we get that cold shock and then our body just revs up the stimulatory hormones to help us warm up. So it's going to be workout for our thyroid. It's going to increase thyroid hormones, adrenal hormones, epinephrine, norepinephrine. It's going to increase cortisol, growth hormone, and also dopamine. So we're going to feel good as well. You never feel good going in, but afterwards you feel like $1,000,000. You
mentioned thyroid, the cold plunge increasing thyroid hormone. So this, I think, brings up a point that we should just pause and talk about is that these blanket recommendations can be maybe not the best for some people. And this comes down to really working with somebody that you can trust and knows the physiology of the body and how these different modalities impact the body, right? Because if somebody's in a hyperthyroid state, they probably don't want to do a cold plunge based on the fact that it's going to increase thyroid hormones. Would that be correct?
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And even if there's like antibodies to thyroids, I would be very leery with cold plunge and activating that thyroid and going back to start low and go slow. Like you don't want to go hit the gas and just get a huge release of thyroid hormones if you have issues with it. So start low and figure out how your body and mind relate to whatever stress that you're feeling.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Fertility Formula Masterclass. My team and I have helped hundreds of married couples conceive naturally without IUI or IVF. If you're struggling to get pregnant or stay pregnant and have been told there are no other options, don't stop searching. There is hope, and finding the root cause is key. If you want to learn more about how we can support you on your journey to motherhood, head over to drnicolemorris.com, and don't forget, Nicole has an H in it. All right, let's get back to the show. And primarily this conversation conversation we're having today is aimed toward men, but I think it's important to mention the female aspect as well, that cold plunge, we have to remember, I think, just to back up a second, that as women, our hormones cycle on a monthly rhythm. Men's hormones cycle on a 24-hour rhythm. So we're not men. We don't have a surge of testosterone every single morning when we wake up. And I think that that's something that women fail to remember and society fails to remember. I'm going to like take a tangent for a second, but I think like it's so important to remember the expectations of men cannot be the same as expectations of females, right? Even from a work perspective, there are certain times in the cycle, and I try to plan my life around my cycle because I know that I will perform better in certain tasks that I have to do if I'm doing them around ovulation. I know I write better before I start my menstrual cycle. I'm like more emotional and I can just get to my feelings a little bit more and write better content. But I know if I have a project to work on or I need to record something or give a talk somewhere, like I'm going to try to do that around ovulation when I feel my best, right? And so that's different than men. Men typically tend to feel that surge and that best first thing in the morning, right? When their testosterone is highest for the day. And so coming back off of my soapbox and my tangent there, it's that we have to remember, like, just because cold plunging is potentially good for men doesn't mean that it's good for women. In the second half of our cycle, after ovulation, when implantation is trying to occur, you don't want to get into an ice bath that's 40 degrees when you're trying to grow life in your womb. We need the uterus to be warm. And I'm sure, Cody, you could talk about that much greater extent from a Chinese medicine aspect than I know anything about. But those are just kind of some of the things that you want to be really conscientious about of, like, let's not freeze our womb when we're trying to grow life in it. We need warmth there.
Wholeheartedly agree. Yeah. And I got to go back to the dose issue. So you're right. When you're trying to conceive and when you have conceived and you're growing that little baby, you don't want to be doing the cold stress and jumping in there. You don't want to be hammering the stress. It's going to alter your hormones. It's just not going to produce a nice environment for the baby to grow in because you're just pressing the gas in sympathetic mode, and parasympathetic is really where the growth and all that vitality happens. That being said, Cindy's my wife, Dr. Cindy Mai. When I would go down to the water and I would go in up to my neck before working out, she would venture in and just put her toes in, or her feet in rather. So it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You can, if you enjoy the practice, if you like the stimulation that comes with that, definitely start low, go slow, but just don't go overboard. That's the biggest message with a lot of things that activate the stress response.
I think there's a message in there too that you didn't point out, that you as her husband are going in up to your head, right? I see you go under sometimes too. But you're not pushing that on her. You're not saying like, I can do this and you should be able to do it too. You're respecting where she's at as a female and her physiology and how her body functions, and knowing that just because you can do it doesn't mean that her body was built to be under that same amount of stress as yours. And to take that stress a step further, when we're stressed, we're going to secrete cortisol, and cortisol steals progesterone. So even more so, like in the second half of your cycle, if you're putting your body into a state where cortisol has to surge, it needs the building blocks. It needs the Legos to build the cortisol. Well, it's going to do that by stealing pregnenolone, which takes away from progesterone. So we have to just be cognizant of the downstream effects, and not just jumping on the bandwagon of something that we see all the influencers on Instagram doing, right? Is jumping in their cold plunge. And it does make me cringe when I see women in an ice bath that's 40 degrees, especially during the second half of their cycle. It's just not conducive when we're trying to get pregnant, or really just for like hormone balance in general also. So thank you for bringing that up, Cody. I think that you made some really valid points there in that. All right, let's take our conversation a little bit of a different direction. Same topic, little different direction. We started polling our clients in our fertility program. Keep in mind, our fertility program is Christian-based. We're not really here to talk about religion today, but we polled the men and have found that a significant proportion of men in our programs who identify typically as Christian men, not that that's the main factor here, but are participating in acts of porn and masturbation multiple times a week, multiple times a month. And truthfully, we were like flabbergasted and shocked. And maybe I have my head in the sand, but we always know in medicine that people underreport, right? So if people are saying, oh, we're drinking 3 alcoholic beverages a week, it's probably like 5 or 6. 6. If they say they're smoking weed once a week, it's probably like 2 or 3 times a week. We know that there's always an underreporting. So to say that we were shocked is an understatement. And we're in this sense where we have all this data, and now we need to support these men and these couples in strengthening their relationship and removing some of these barriers, especially in a fertility sense that can be harmful in a reproductive sense. So I'd love to just dive into this a little bit with you, Cody, and let's talk about porn and masturbation and why do we think that that is so rampant? What do we do about this?
Man, that's a great question. And you're right. It is rampant. I was doing a little digging last week on this issue and found out that porn sites get more traffic than Netflix, Amazon, and Twitter combined. It's huge. Just that fact alone is shocking. I want to say there's good reason for it. I mean, the Coolidge effect shows that animals seek out novelty, and I think men and some types of women also find that to be true. And that's exactly what you get with porn. You get hyper novelty. It's super stimulating, taps that dopamine trigger a lot. And it's just readily available, and that is very, very problematic because it rewires your arousal systems in your head for that hyper novelty, that stimulation. And so when you remove that and go to normal real life relationships, you've rewired yourself to have that stimulation. So everything is just seems a little bit dull, seems flat. And that's where a lot of sexual dysfunction comes from. It's whether it be ED, premature ejaculation, sexual satisfaction, or just the intimacy and the bond that you're having with your wife.
So how do you see this have an impact on relationships at a deeper level? I mean, you kind of described that already, but one thing that we find in our program is that the same people that are reporting masturbation and pornography use are the same people that are reporting, difficulties being intimate with their spouse at certain times in the cycle. And I understand, like, when you're in a fertility journey, it turns into a bit of a job, right? We have to get this done at a certain day, this many days in a row, and that the pleasure or excitement is kind of removed from that. And I understand that. But, I often think to myself, well, like, no wonder you're struggling. Your self-pleasure is more pleasurable to you than your wife or your spouse. And so what are your thoughts about that in that component?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And I'd like to go back to what porn offers, what it provides for men and why they're seeking it out. And again, it's just like so many things, multifactorial. It's a stress relief because you can get that dopamine hit. So some individuals, whether it be at the office or at home, they're stressed out, they're anxious, they just want to check out for a minute. They'll go to porn and get that dopamine hit. And that is, a negative self-coping mechanism. But then also it acts as a proxy for intimacy outside the bedroom. If there's relationship problems, if things are stagnant, if it does feel like work, trying to conceive because you're task oriented during that time, men seek out that as well. And due to that strong dopamine hit and just that hyper novelty, that sensation that you get from porn, men seek that out. And then it's really easy if it's not balanced, or even you choose that route. Once you go back, you have to wait and retrain your system to normal intimacy. And that's really the big thing here is with almost any addiction, you're going to have a period of discomfort when you're retraining your body and mind to go back. I want to say back to normal, just back to normal function. And that's what a lot of men, and honestly, a lot of people, anybody who's addicted, that's what they don't want. Right. But that's just part of the process. I was just going to say one thing that I've noticed, when me and my wife, Cindy, were trying to conceive is there was definitely a task oriented process throughout the whole journey. But bringing in just a small amount of change, bringing that novelty back, you have that excitement, you have that arousal that comes with that. And there's been studies, I think it was a recent study in 2025 this year, that showed just a 4% difference in just the routine or just your normal way of going about things brings that novelty, brings that arousal back. So it doesn't have to be like you're in a porn set or just changing everything up, just a small difference.
I think you just brought up so many valid things that I'd like to go back to. The first thing is you mentioned this, like the checkout, right? And as a woman, I can relate to that in my doom scroll
And I guess I'm like ignorant to the world of porn. So I'm sure there's apps where people go to and there's websites, of course, right? But like I will pick up my phone and go to Instagram and I'm just like doom scrolling because I'm overwhelmed. And I think that goes back to the nervous system, right, Cody? So we're stuck in this sympathetic nervous system state. And this is just where we live in 2025. I would say the majority of the population, right? We're in that fight or flight mode where you are in the field with the lion. Are you going to fight it? Are you going to flight it and run away? Are you going to freeze? Right. And I think a lot of us are actually stuck in freeze. I catch myself there. And it's just like, we're so overstimulated and there's so much to do that I just can't even like take the step to move forward. So what do? I pick up my phone and I start to scroll Instagram and get dopamine from, I don't even know what other people are doing in their lives, as ridiculous as that sounds, but it's true, right? And I think what you're describing is that men do the same thing, but it's with porn and they're getting that same dopamine. So I think the value in that is just helping women to understand the process is kind of the same. The way it's working in the brain is the same, right? It doesn't have that from a religious aspect, like it doesn't have that morality issue tied to it being on Instagram. I mean, but really maybe it does because maybe we're idolizing Instagram like men are idolizing porn. So I think it just gives us a moment as women to step back and say like, okay, is what I'm doing really all that different? Like I'm not looking at naked men, but I'm still wasting time scrolling Instagram because I'm trying to check out and get some dopamine. And I think if we can realize that and just see the similarities and the differences, we can have a little bit more clarity, a little bit more understanding, and kind of call ourselves out on our own stuff so that we can better support our husbands and stepping away from that. At the same time, right? It's hard because like one is like from a religious aspect, a large morality issue, but it's kind of the same issue. And so maybe we need to support our husbands in a way of like, let's give up porn and I'm going to give up Instagram. Like, let's do this together and walk through that challenging brain rewiring discomfort together as a team instead of, coming from the aspect of like, you shouldn't be doing this. This is sinful. This is hurting our marriage, like blah, blah, blah. Well, scrolling Instagram is probably hurting your marriage too at the end of the day. So maybe I'm calling myself out on my Instagram addiction right now, but it is what it is, right? So another thing that you brought up that really stuck out to me was the 4% change in action, right? Or environment. That's really not that significant. And I think that brings a lot of hope to couples trying to conceive that are just really in this like despair state of losing that intimacy, right? And just really feeling like it's a job and it has to be done. And 4%, like that's like 4 out of 100. That's not very much. So if we can just have slight changes that can really ease like the tension and the pressure and the repetitiveness of the act that needs to happen for you to conceive and have a baby, right? So I think that's just something to go back and highlight. Like that's really not that significant. Just 4%. You can do 4%. Even if you feel like you can't, you can do 4%.
Yeah, just a minor tweak and it makes all the difference. Yeah,
absolutely.
Takes work into a fun task.
Fun task, yeah. So what do you say, like when you're working with men, Cody, what is your advice to them? If men are stuck in this pattern of self-pleasure, how do we give them tangible ideas, actions, guidance in stepping away from that and rekindling that with their wife?
That's a great question. And I like to use the ADD model, formula, if you will. So that's awareness, direction, and discipline. So awareness is the first step that you need to correct any problem or change your behaviors to a new habit. You got to bring awareness around that. So what does that look like? It's once the urge comes up, I want to go onto this website or this app, whatever it may be. What am I feeling? What am I thinking? Is this a form of escapism? Is this a proxy for what I should be doing in the bedroom? Like what's going on there? And just getting awareness around your own behaviors. And then from that, once you get clarity on that, then you can have proper direction and put a roadmap in place that you can get to where you want to go. And that's going to be reducing the friction, maybe removing the computer or deleting the apps or whatever you got to do just to help you build awareness, get that roadmap, and then ultimately discipline is going to be the fix-all, the cure-all for a lot of those things. So that's how I approach that issue with men, and that's a lot of behavioral issues as well. And obviously the ideal is to get rid of that porn and then have that intimate relationship with your wife, and that should be the goal in and of itself, right? So it's just recognizing this negative self-coping mechanism and figuring out how to shift it so not only you benefit, but your family benefits as well. And just tying those in together with the direction, that blue roadmap, if you will, and then constant action.
Well, thank you for sharing that insight with us, Cody. I think that that's helpful and gives men just some tangible things that they can even think through as they start to change those patterns and behaviors. If you're open to it, I'd love to kind of transition and chat with you a little bit about you and your wife, Dr. Cindy, who I just adore. I know that you guys tried to conceive for quite a few months before you were successful there. And I would love to just hear your perspective from a male of what that was like for you, and maybe provide some insight for other males walking through the same journey.
Sure. Such a fitting question. So the expected due date is today, July 9th.
Oh, that's right.
But Cindy's still cooking. So it's just a waiting game. But
That's
if
right.
we go back all the way to where this journey started, it was intentional. So we talked about it, and it was about a year and a half. We decided that we would like to make this move. And Cindy was very, very diligent about changing her life a year out. And then I got to be honest, I was a little bit lax. But and myself, I really started changing around 3 months, just due to the cycle of sperm when spermogenesis, when it starts and then when it delivers. And that's that 3-month window. But we were very conscious about how we can improve our fertility. We're, dialed in our diet with whole foods. We, went way out on the fringes with, changing our deodorant, changing our laundry detergent, changing our toothpaste, cotton underwear, just everything, just really changing it up. And with all those changes and just our normal lifestyle, the way that we live, I would say that we're both very, very healthy. So in my mind, it was, okay, this is going to be a one and done thing. No problem. It's going to be fine. But as the months went by, it's just really started to affect my psyche, seeing the hope, seeing the light in Cindy's eyes, and then having her period again, and just seeing that light dim just a bit. And feeling guilt for that, not being able to provide what she wants. That was tough. And as a man, or just me as a general rule, I want to fix things. There's a problem. This is my value. This is what I can do. And that was very, very tough for me to sit back and just like, look, we're doing everything that we can. Took a page from Stoicism and just like, okay, well, what can you control? What you can't. And then once I made that shift to just like, we're doing everything we can, just let go, and it's just going to happen when it happens. I think that put myself from sympathetic, like fight or flight, to more parasympathetic and just acceptance and just relaxed. And it's about a month after I did that, that's when we conceived. So I don't know if it was me, I don't know if it was her, and it's a joint effort, but I thought that was very interesting. Just that whole cycle of, frustration to what can I do, to helplessness, to just accepting what you can and just letting it go.
And that's not always easy to do. But I think it's worth noting too, like, I know you and Cindy pretty well, and I know you live a very healthy lifestyle. I remember, not that I use the microwave often, but there was only microwaves in, and maybe there was toaster ovens, I don't know, but the lunchroom, remember in med school, there was like those toaster ovens and the microwaves. And I remember Cindy always coming up to me and saying, don't stand in front of the microwave, move. I know you guys are healthy, right? And I think the point that I want to make is that you guys are, I would consider, like, definition of health, right? And it still took you several months to conceive. And so I think that that's just a really good example for people coming into this that maybe aren't aware of nutrition yet, are still drinking pop and eating processed foods and not moving their bodies. It's going to take some time, especially if we go down this healing journey. In the example, it's just that you guys are so healthy and it still took you 5 months. And I think that also just speaks to, I don't know the exact percentages off the top of my mind right now, but the percentage likelihood that you are to conceive every cycle is only like 20%. So even in the most healthy person, it's still only 20%. So I think it's just good to keep that in mind as you're walking through this journey and kind of feeling that pressure that it's not guaranteed every cycle. Just because we checked all the boxes and did all the things, right?
Yeah. Which goes back to just acceptance and just, believing that things are going to work out. Just do everything you can and just take solace in that.
Yeah. And the nervous system piece that you mentioned too, Cody, is a conversation that I have with my clients often, is that when you are in sympathetic, when you are in fight or flight, your body doesn't feel safe to conceive. Your body is saying, I need to keep you safe. And reproduction, from a very animalistic aspect, is not necessary to keep you safe, right? It's going to keep you safer not to reproduce. And so we really have to support our couples in getting into parasympathetic, into that resting and digesting, where the nervous system says, okay, we're safe.
safe and reproduction can happen now. And I think just in general, outside of the fertility struggle and journey that so many couples are walking through, again, I think we said this earlier, but we just are so stuck in a state of sympathetic dominance just because of our society and culture and in all of the expectations that the world puts on us and we put on ourselves. So I think that's like such a beautiful place to end, of just realizing that we need safety. Your body needs to feel safe to be able to conceive. And we do have some power over that, right? It might feel overwhelming to try to figure out how to do that yourself, but that's why we're all here to support you in calming your nervous system and helping your body to feel safe to conceive and move forward.
I love it. I agree with you completely. And I just want to throw this back on you for a little bit. Like, it is difficult to shift from that sympathetic, just hyperactive mode to just calm, relax, and just acceptance. Do you have a go-to strategy? Like, what do you use to help make that shift?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I'm glad that you asked. So I just start with breathing. Just breathe. Most of us don't breathe deep enough, right? So just very basically, like, dig into the 4-square breathing, right? What do we mean by that? Breathe in for 4 seconds, hold your breath 4 seconds, breathe out as long as you can, hold another 4 seconds. And as you do that, like, you should feel, at least when I do it, I feel everything in my body calming down. I feel the cortisol coming down. I feel that shift. So just focus on your breathing. And that's easy. You can do that standing at the kitchen sink, washing dishes. You can do that driving in the car. Like, just focus on your breathing is a good place to start. Putting your feet in the grass, like, don't be afraid of nature. Don't be afraid of parasites. Like, get your bare feet in the grass, right? Lay on the ground, put your feet in the ground, just centering yourself there. And another thing that we work a lot with our clients on is setting a routine. So we don't want our routine to be so extreme that it causes more stress, but our adrenals don't like surprises. And I think that we don't remember that always, right? So going to bed at the same time, getting up at the same time in the morning, eating your meals at the same time, your adrenals will not be stressed. They know what to expect. They know what's coming next. When you go to bed at 10 o'clock one night and 2 a.m. the next, and you're eating breakfast at 10 a.m. and then you're not eating till 2 o'clock the next day, like, that's really stressful. Your body doesn't know what to expect. So just establishing a mild routine, I think, can be very helpful. Those are our basic lifestyle things we start with. And then blue light. We're all so addicted to our blue light, right? So trying to reduce that blue light a few hours before you go to bed. I love beeswax candles. That's something that I've really incorporated, I would say, in the last year and a half, is trying to get rid of the artificial light in my house when the sun's going down. So trying to really be in that circadian rhythm that we talk about, and just burning pure beeswax candles, especially in the winter when it's dark so much earlier, but trying to get the artificial light out, the blue light out, relying on red light, candlelight, and just trying to live in the rhythms that we were built to live in. And I guess another thing that I talk to clients about a lot is thinking how your great-great-grandparents lived. Like, what did they eat? What were their patterns? My great-great-grandma definitely wasn't sitting in front of a screen for 8 hours a day recording content like I am, right? She was outside tending her garden, maybe barefoot, collecting eggs from her chickens, kneading her bread, like just living at a different pace. And I know that that's not realistic for everybody to live at that pace, right? But just whatever nuggets we can take from our ancestors and apply those to our life can have a really large impact.
God, thank you so much. That was a masterclass, Doc. Thanks for that. So many nuggets in there. I mean, it's so good. And I like that guiding principle of your grandparents. Like, what were they eating? What were they surrounded by? Because they were living in an environment that our body was designed to live in. You know, those are optimal conditions. And if you use that as a guiding principle, you can say, okay, well, what isn't? And like you touched on, the screens, the blue light, any industrial chemicals that weren't invented until like 1940s plus, you know, so it becomes a really good tool to use to just split like what's healthy and what's not. And I love the rhythm thing. That's a crucial part of the circadian rhythm. And I like to think of that as the sun. So if the sun came out at 6 one morning and then maybe 1 p.m. the next morning or the next day, it would be chaos. Like, the plants wouldn't know what to do. Animals would be out of sync. And that's exactly what happens to us. So I love that, all the advice that you shared. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to mention like the supplement piece, because I think this is what people crave, is they want the supplements, because again, we said this earlier, they want the easy fix. But the truth is, like, yeah, are there herbs that we can give you? Are there homeopathics we can give you to help balance the nervous system? Yeah. Do we use those? Yes, because again, they're a life raft, right? But it's putting in this work to doing all of the things that you and I just described is where the true healing is, that's going to last longer than the bottle of ashwagandha that you're taking, right? So I think it's just important to keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, very good. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Cody. It's been such a joy chatting with you, picking your brain about things. I know some of the things that we chatted about today as you're listening might feel a little uncomfortable for you. And that's okay. Maybe this is your first exposure to some of these things, and that's okay too. My hope is that you're just willing to take them in. You're willing to start conversations, dig a little deeper, get to the root of some of these things. And we really just need to bond together as a society and support our men so that they can be men, right? And to lead and to care for us and to break the chains of those things that are kind of holding them back from their potential. So again, I appreciate it, Cody. Any last things that you would like to say, and then share with us where everybody listening can find you if they're interested in working with you?
We all have things that we know, we have habits that we know we shouldn't be doing, but we just keep doing anyways. That's the perfect place to start with improving your health. And we all have those things. We all have those habits. And I would say start there, build awareness around it, build a plan, and then take consistent action. That's some parting advice. And then you can find me at Adaptive-Medicine on Instagram, Adaptive Medicine. It's just Adaptive Medicine all around.
Google Adaptive Medicine. You will find Cody.
You got it.
Beautiful. Well, thanks again, Cody. We'll talk soon.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Thanks for hanging out with me on today's episode of Prescribing the Truth. If you loved our chat, you can find me on all the socials. Come say hi on Instagram at dr.NicoleMorris. And don't forget, I drop exclusive content on YouTube every week, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. Also, I've got to tell you, if you are in need of high-quality, research-backed supplements, check out shopdrmorris.com for my full line of third-party tested, USA-made products. My Prenatal Plus is top of the line for fertility support, and if you've got little ones, grab a bottle of Kids Complete too. Lastly, if you and your husband are trying to conceive naturally without IUI or IVF, my team and I would love to support you, pray with you, and walk this journey with you. Just head over to drnicolemorris.com. That's Dr. Nicole Morris, Nicole with an H, to book a preconception consultation with me. Thanks for joining me today. Stay informed and God bless.